I'm Liz Faublas, and this is Currents. Ahead of Pope Benedict's trip to Lebanon, a representative from that country shares his insight.
We hope that the Pope is going to send the message that the Christians are actually an integral part of Lebanon, and the Christians should stay in Lebanon, and they should build homes and build relationships.
Plus, a parish in Crown Heights looks to the future.
I believe there's very much a peaceful sense that the Lord has brought us to this point, and there may be some questions we will never have full answers for, but that they are ready to walk with the Lord.
And we head to Park Slope for our latest School of the Week.
If you're nurturing and loving and you establish this rapport with the children, that comes first. Once you have that, then you could challenge any academic issue.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. The cauldron that is the Middle East continues to boil tonight, while the Pope's peace mission to Lebanon is just hours away. New anti-American protests have broken out in Egypt, Tunisia, and Yemen, all in response to a trailer for an anti-Muslim movie on the internet. But in Libya, where U.S. Ambassador Christopher Stevens was murdered yesterday, there are pro-American rallies. In Benghazi, Libyans, young and old, took to the streets carrying signs saying, "Sorry, people of America. Chris Stevens was a friend to all Libyans, and no to al-Qaeda, no to violence." American intelligence experts believe the attack on Ambassador Stevens and our consulate in Benghazi was probably an al-Qaeda terrorist operation, using the film protests as cover. Libya's prime minister says at least one person has been arrested in connection to the killings of Stevens and 3 other Americans. Now at the Vatican, while the final preparations for the Pope's trip are being completed, a new statement by Father Federico Lombardi is being released, this time condemning yesterday's violence. Father Lombardi says, quote, "Nothing can justify the activity of terrorist organizations and homicidal violence." Comments yesterday had called for religious understanding. Hezbollah, identified as a terrorist organization by the U.S. government, is guaranteeing Pope Benedict's safety while he is in Lebanon. The Pope arrives in Beirut on Friday. Papal Nuncio to Lebanon, Archbishop Gabriele Casilla, says without the guarantee, the trip would not have gone ahead. Earlier, I welcomed the Consul General of Lebanon in New York, Majdi Ramadan, to our studios, where he shared his thoughts on the Pope's visit to his home country and today's troubles. Majdi, thank you so much for joining us. Before we get into the heart of our interview, I do want to address the attacks that are occurring right now as we speak and spreading, unfortunately, throughout the Middle East. Now, from your perspective and understanding, how much of the violence that we're seeing now on embassies and compounds in the Middle East, so much more about the film, and how much is it about using this movie and the controversy that it's stirring to promote a more radical agenda against politics, against Christians?
About the attacks, I would say, I mean, it's clear it's the responsibility of the governments that host these embassies to protect them. And of course, we're very sad for what happened in Libya, and it's something that we all condemn. And I mean, hopefully something like that is not going to happen again. But I mean, I can think about this from our angle in Lebanon. I'm not really very much concerned about stuff like that happening in Lebanon, because Lebanon is a very diverse country. It's a democratic country, and we haven't had like such attacks on embassies before. And I know that the U.S. Embassy is in a very safe location in Lebanon, and I know that the government is doing its best to protect all diplomatic corps. So I'm not really concerned, but of course I feel very sad. And it's definitely something that we all condemn, and we convey our heartfelt condolences to the family of the ambassador. Absolutely. And all the Americans that died, and it's really very sad, and hopefully something like that will not be repeated again.
And obviously it did raise concerns about the Pope's visit to Lebanon, which begins tomorrow. In your opinion, by the time we reach tomorrow, the violence may have spread, but you do believe that a Christian presence is essential in Lebanon. You've said that, and not so much as just being present, but there should be some kind of acceptance and participation. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
That's true. We're actually, I'll go a little bit back. The Christians in Lebanon, and basically more so the Catholics, played a very important role in the creation of the Lebanese state. And Christians in Lebanon, not like Christians in many other countries in the region, play a very important role in the country, in the political system, in the economy, and in the society. And I mean, you see Christians all over the Middle East. There are Christians in Egypt, in Syria, in Iraq, and in Jordan. But I'm really proud to say that the Christians in Lebanon do play a very important role.
Okay.
And they have been doing that for a very long time. And that's why we're very happy that the Pope is coming is we hope that the Pope is going to send the message that the Christians are actually an integral part of Lebanon. And the Christians should stay in Lebanon, and they should build homes and build relationships and build businesses because they belong to the region and they are a very important part, at least how I see it, not just for the Middle East, but also like for Lebanon, the Christians are very important.
And Christians in the region have said that they want full and equal citizenship with the majority of the Muslims. And it's essential for them to not just have a sense of tolerance. Do you think that's possible?
I mean, I would say, again, because I would speak as a Lebanese, I'm not going to say it's just possible. I think it's their right. And Christians all over the Middle East should be participating fully and equally like all other citizens. But again, as a Lebanese, I'm very proud to say that Christians do play a very important role in Lebanon. And this is the message that we hope that the Pope is going to be conveying to Christians, not just in Lebanon, to Lebanon, in Syria, and Iraq. Because, I mean, we saw that some of the Christians in Iraq, unfortunately, left the country. Some of them actually came to Lebanon and some moved to Syria at some point. So we hope the message is going to be that the Christians should stay. They are a very important part of the region of Lebanon. And it would be sad to think that the Middle East, where the cradle of Christianity is, that it would be without Christians. So, I mean, hopefully that would be the strong message that the Pope will be conveying in Lebanon.
He has prayed and he has delivered the message that there should be an urgency and of a dialogue between Christians and Muslims, especially in achieving peace. In your opinion, from your vantage point, what must this dialogue entail? Are there any concrete, substantial strategies that can put in place now to facilitate that kind of community?
I think there are many ways, but let me just put it in another way. You see, what's going on in the Arab region now, it's like the Arab Spring. I mean, in Lebanon, we have had an Arab Spring for a very long time. It's not a perfect democracy, but we do have a democracy. And it's a participatory democracy. And Christians do play a very important role in that democracy. So many of the issues that you see the Arabs in other countries are dealing with, these are questions we have already dealt with. And I know you can always think of new avenues where Christians can participate even more, and I think everybody's open for that. And that's why, it's not just the Christians who are receiving the Pope in Lebanon, it's all the Lebanese. And they are organizing this huge mass, and they're going to be Muslims, they're going to be Christians, and among Muslims, Shia, and Sunni, and Druze, and Orthodox. So it's not just an event for Christians in Lebanon. It's actually a national event. It's for all the Lebanese. And I actually remember very well when Pope Jean Paul went to Lebanon. I was actually at the time still working as a junior diplomat at the protocol department in our ministry, and we were organizing the mass. And I saw at that time how many people came to the mass. And I'm sure also this time, it's going to be over 1 million. The estimates are going to be that. So everybody's waiting for the Pope. It's not just the Christians who are waiting for the Pope.
In the time that we have, I kind of just want to bring this full circle and bring it a little bit closer to home. As you know, we've been experiencing our own battles with religious tolerance and religious liberty here in the U.S., and which is not to suggest that this is in any comparison to the violence that's happening in the Middle East right now. But tell me, from your vantage point and your understanding, here in the U.S., the religious tolerance and religious liberties issues, especially with regard to Christians and Muslims, how are we here? What is the state of the dialogue between Christians and Muslims here in the U.S.?
I could tell you my own experience. I've been in New York for the past 10 years, and I'm a Muslim, and honestly, I have so many good American friends. I never felt that I was discriminated against because I'm a Muslim. And wherever you go in New York, and cab drivers, you see them. I actually was once in a cab, and I think the driver was Pakistani, and he was telling me how people are treating him here. And I'm not going to say from where how he was treated back in his country, but he says, as a Muslim, he feels here that he's not just welcome, he feels like equal, and he's happy to be here. So I really never felt that there's any discrimination. At least that's my own personal experience. So I think this country is a country which has always been open for immigrants from different religions and from different cultures and from different creeds. So I mean, this is basically this is why this country is great, not just because it's powerful. And I think these are some of the important things about this country. It's open, and people can participate no matter who they are, where they come, as long as they're successful. I think everybody succeeds in this country. It's I don't know. I've had a very good experience here, so I think you're really dealing with these issues very well. Okay. And I mean, sometimes I reflect on how we do that also in Lebanon. I'm not going to say that we always manage to do that perfectly, but I think over the years we've had problems, but in a way we always manage to overcome our problems.
We're definitely going to leave it on that encouraging note. I really do appreciate your being here and sharing your perspective. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
And please be sure to stay with NET for special live coverage of the Pope's Peace Pilgrimage to Lebanon beginning Friday morning at 6:30. Don't go anywhere. The rest of the day's headlines coming up next. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Liz Faublas. Middle East experts are saying that the need for the Pope's journey to Lebanon is becoming more urgent by the hour as killings from the Syrian civil war spread into Lebanon. The Pope has identified his trip as a pilgrimage of peace. But that peace in Lebanon is being threatened with more than 24 people killed and many more wounded as clashes between Syrian forces are being fought now inside Lebanon. Syrians by the thousands are fleeing into that country seeking refuge, and Rome Reports has more on that migration.
This is a refugee camp in Lebanon. It's here in these tents that thousands of Syrians are looking to start a new life after leaving everything behind. With 17 of us living in one house, how are we supposed to sleep? We don't have clothes, so how are our men going to dress? I don't complain though, I thank God. For now, neighboring Lebanon has become the temporary home for tens of thousands of Syrians. In fact, the ongoing civil war has forced many Muslims and Christians to flee. As a minority of only 10%, some say they felt threatened by radical Islamist groups in their native country. So most have migrated to Lebanon, Jordan, Turkey, and Iraq. Others have moved within Syria.
WFP is responding to this emergency by providing food assistance to more than 1.5 million Syrians inside their country.
The northern part of Lebanon is where most Syrians are finding refuge. That includes Tripoli and Bekaa Valley. Their main goal is simply to survive. As the number of refugees increases, the World Food Program has also had to increase its assistance.
Through vouchers, through in-kind food distributions, or hot meals as the situation would require.
The WFP is providing assistance to roughly 33,000 refugees in Lebanon. By the month of December, if the conflict continues and refugees continue to flee, the number is expected to rise to 40,000 people.
And meantime, New York's Cardinal Timothy Dolan is reminding the world of the cost we all must pay because of religious violence. Speaking at a symposium at Catholic University on Wednesday, Cardinal Dolan said that the events in Libya and Egypt, quote, point to what is at stake. The Cardinal says that we need to be respectful of other religious traditions, but make clear that violence in the name of religion is wrong. Putting it into some perspective, he said that 150,000 Christians are killed for their faith every year. That equals 17 new martyrs every hour of every day. Well, a new opinion poll of Catholics is finding that a majority, 57%, believe the federal contraception mandate is an infringement on religious liberty. Meantime, the person considered the driving force behind the order has broken the law. According to the Office of Special Counsel, Secretary of State Kathleen Sebelius violated a federal statute when she campaigned for President Obama during an official government trip. The office says the Department of Health and Human Services later reclassified the trip after the fact and reimbursed the federal government's cost. No comments from Sebelius. And at Washington National Cathedral Thursday morning, more than 1,500 guests attended services to honor the first man to step onto the moon. Neil Armstrong commanded Apollo 11 to the moon in 1969. He died on August 25th at the age of 82. Congressional leaders, astronauts, and family gathered inside the cathedral to pay tribute to a true American hero. 50 years and 1 day after President John F. Kennedy gave his famous speech challenging the country to land a man on the moon. Gene Cernan, a fellow astronaut and one of Armstrong's closest friends, said goodbye.
And as you soar through the heavens, beyond where even eagles dare to go, you can now finally put out your hands and touch the face of God. Farewell, my friend. You have left us far too soon. But we want you to know we do cherish the time we have had and shared together. God bless you, Neil.
Neil Armstrong will be buried at sea on Friday. And sad news today out of Albany, former Covenant House director Sister Mary Rose McGahety has died. Sister McGahety took over as president of Covenant House during tough times following accusations that its founder stepped down and accusations of financial impropriety and sexual abuse. Covenant House, based in Manhattan, has been a well-known safe haven for homeless young people. During Sister McGahety's time in charge, the charity doubled the number of youngsters who were saved from the streets prior to taking over at Covenant House. Sister McGahety was an associate director at Catholic Charities here in Brooklyn. She died Thursday in Albany. She was 84 years old. Don't go anywhere. There's more currents ahead. Coming up, amid a change, a Brooklyn parish is hopeful.
It is the people's own reflection of their needs and the needs of the church. To be able to free up resources so that we can evangelize, we can teach, and we can continue to listen to the voice of the Lord.
And welcome back. I'm Liz Faublas. It's the end of an era in Crown Heights. This past weekend, the final regularly scheduled Mass at St. Ignatius Church was celebrated. Now, the church had been a worship site of St. Francis of Assisi St. Blaise Parish for the last 2 years. When the merger with St. Francis St. Blaise was announced, the diocese said in a statement that it was concerned with a, quote, steady decline in sacramental celebrations and persistent financial deficits. We headed to St. Ignatius Church last Sunday to hear from priests and parishioners.
I've been worshiping at St. Ignatius for about 16 years.
I have been worshiping at St. Ignatius on Rogers Avenue for 46 years.
This was their sacred space. Many of them have been there for 50, 40, 30 years. This is where some of them, they received their sacraments of initiation. Many of them were married in St. Ignatius Church. Many of them buried their loved ones, their children. They received their baptism and their confirmation Eucharist. So certainly there's a lot of, like, grieving. There's absolute grieving. Two communities will come together to worship as one. And it will bring a lot more dynamism to the element of worship. So I think it's a strength. Now, that's not to say that there's all kinds of, emotional feelings about the decision. But in the long run, I think this is what the Lord is calling us, so that there's vibrancy in our parish.
For me, St. Ignatius is like my home. But I guess the transition is just, it takes time. It takes time to grieve, to let it go, and to move on. I know God has a plan for me.
Well, St. Ignatius won't be used as a worship site any longer because it was necessary that for financial reasons, that we had to do the merger in the first place.
It is the people's own reflection of their needs and the needs of the church. To be able to free up resources so that we can evangelize, we can teach, and we can continue to listen to the voice of the Lord, who is asking in this time, in this place, with the challenges before us, to respond as best we can. And this is one very difficult decision that will help us to do that.
Well, my prayers was answered, and my prayers was answered that when God the Father traveled in the tabernacle with the Jews, he traveled different areas. So if we have to give up one area to come into another area, we're just doing what the times call for. I am sorry, yes, because baptism and christening and so family is at St. Ignatius, but I'm ready to move on.
I think there's a peaceful resignation. I believe there's very much a peaceful sense that the Lord has brought us to this point, and there may be some questions we will never have full answers for, but that they are ready to walk with the Lord. And that is the greatest recipe for success in any parish life.
Stay tuned, more currents after the break. When we return, students' emotional well-being is key at an academy in Park Slope.
When I teach, I do expect, manners. I do expect children to achieve the goals that I set for them, and I do have high standards.
And finally tonight, we're more than a week into the new school year, and for many students in Brooklyn and Queens, that means a new school. St. Xavier Catholic Academy in Park Slope welcomed students for the first time as an academy last week. Now, of course, attention to academics at St. Xavier's is rigorous, and the emotional well-being of the youngsters is also playing a big role in the classroom. St. Xavier's is our School of the Week.
We transitioned this September to St. Xavier Catholic Academy from St. Xavier Elementary School. I think the biggest change is obviously the governance. We now have a board of directors working with us.
I think it's a positive change that we have converted to an academy because the board of directors, God bless them, they're all volunteers, extraordinarily competent women and men. They are taking on a lot of the responsibilities that were the principals, and some of which were mine. And they bring to it an expertise in each of their fields that can only enrich and build up our school. And our elementary school last year won more money in scholarships than any other elementary school in the entire diocese. So we come from strength and have every reason to believe it will now be even stronger.
When I teach, I do expect, manners. I do expect children to achieve the goals that I set for them, and I do have high standards. And but I have to say, with a balance of, if you're nurturing and loving and you establish this rapport with the children, that comes first. Once you have that, then you could challenge any academic issue or any academic challenge that any child is presented with.
Well, we definitely try to help every single aspect of the child, whether it's an intellectual or the spiritual, and that definitely flows into the classroom. We always check in with each other throughout the day, and we model for each other how we should interact with one another. And it's nice to see that interaction with each other, that they help each other learn, and if they're having a tough day, help them through that as well.
St. Xavier Elementary School and now St. Xavier Catholic Academy participate in the Emotional Literacy Program, which is a collaboration between the Diocese of Brooklyn and Yale University. It's an ongoing conversation about the fact that children need to be emotionally safe and happy in a school before they can tap into their cognitive abilities.
I try to make sure that I know how they learn best, and sometimes it can change, whether they love to draw or whether they love to use manipulatives or whether they like to just write a lot. So I try to tune into that, so to make sure that whatever subject we're learning, whatever standards I need to meet, that I also meet the way that they learn best, just to make sure that they feel a sense of confidence. And one of our class rules is that we always try our best, and I think we always refer to that, and it sort of brings a smile to the kids' face when they can hear, okay, as long as I try my best, that's the best that my teacher's expecting from me, and it encourages them. And then they say, you know what, I can do this. And as long as they feel like that sense of confidence and being comfortable, that's all I could ask as their teacher.
I hope that I could continue being the best that I can as a teacher, and not only teaching my children, as I said, academically, but I hopefully continue to teach them emotionally and most of all spiritually, to become the wonderful men and women that they will be someday.
And that is all for tonight. Please join us on Friday as we look back at the week's news and look ahead to the weekend for Pope Benedict as he arrives in Lebanon. We'll also get a preview of a big religious freedom gathering happening next week in Queens. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Liz Faubles. We leave you tonight with more from the last regular Mass at St. Ignatius Church in Crown Heights. Thank you for watching and have a good night.